Hey everybody, it's Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. We had a few little technical difficulties getting started, but I am here today with Jason Kendrick, and we are going to be talking about living from your heart. Now, we know this is a big topic right now. We've been talking about it for months in different ways, but the one thing that we were talking about is we would like to bring you some practical how to do this because a lot of times we hear these things and we're like, yeah, that sounds really great, but how do we do that? So Jason, thanks for coming on and being my guest today. I appreciate it so much. Of course, you guys know me. I'm a little bit laid back on the interviews, but I will make sure, don't worry, you will have all of the information to get a hold of Jason after this show. So thanks for coming on and being here with us today. And just do real quick, introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the good stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I am Jason B. Kendrick, the Connection Catalyst. I teach interpersonal communication for singles, couples, businesses, and I really teach, my focus is a heart-centered living approach, really getting out of the head and out of the brain and out of the monkey mind and into a heart space of compassion and connection. And so that's really what I focus on. And why I really wanted to come on with you today is to talk more about that and the benefits of that and some tips and tricks of how to live from a more heart-centered space.
I love that so much. So for those of you that don't know, about a year ago, I met Jason because we both spoke at the same event. And so it was really awesome because immediately we kind of clicked. We're like, oh yeah, I get this. So we do that. And a lot of what we do matches and is congruent to each other, which is really cool because what I've been talking about I've been doing this all day, tripping over my words all day. What I've been talking about the last few months is getting our mindset and our heart set congruent. So that whole congruency thing, and it's really about, I love that. That's not a word that I would choose. That's, my guides gave me that word, but it's so perfect for what we're working on as far as all of us are awakened and in the spiritual, place. And we're trying to really start living from a place where love is leading.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what has been really coming forward for me, I'd asked for some guidance during all this quarantine stuff because I'd kind of been like, well, what am I doing with all this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And watching some videos and some documentaries and then listening to a new audiobook that really kind of comes from a higher perspective, it really showed me that as we move forward and as we're evolving and we move into these higher vibrational frequencies, getting out of our headspace is so necessary because of our brains are just these bipolar kind of judgment machines. It's a contrast machine. It's always looking for right or wrong, good or bad, safe or not safe. And so no matter what is presented to it, it's judging and trying to put it in a box. However, being in our heart space, and we know this from being around little babies and pets and people we truly love, we get into that heart space and there's no judgment. It's just love. It's just compassion. And you're more open to and more capable of being intimate and connected with another person without judging or feeling like you need to change them or any of those things that
or
come
change
from
yourself.
Yeah, or change yourself. I mean, those things come from that judgmental brain space of trying to put it in a box of good, bad, right or wrong. I mean, it comes from the amygdala and our kind of reptilian brain of fight and flight and what's safe and what's not safe. The heart doesn't operate that way. The heart is about acceptance and understanding. And honestly, when you get down to the basis of love, which is the one thing where we come from and we're all searching for and really want, love is truly just acceptance. It's really true 100% acceptance of another person, and that comes directly from that compassionate heart space.
Right. It's funny because as you were talking about the brain, I love mindset work. Like that's where I started, was mindset work. And I love mindset work. And it's so important. And the one thing that I've noticed from my guides is we can kind of drop into our heart space and bypass that for a while. But then what we need to do is start working on, instead of just mindset, heart set. But we've got to work on the mindset to get past that, like you're talking about, get past the analyzing, to allow ourselves to really actually sink into our heart space and start becoming heart set instead of mindset. But having it in congruency really, I think, is huge. And it's true, like our brain is compartmentalized. And what I was seeing is like how I teach a lot of times about the way that our brain holds energy and thinks of things is like, if you touch a hot burner, you're going to know next time, oh, don't touch that, it's hot. That's a really good thing to learn. But when we're looking at it from a love perspective, we may have been hurt. And so now our brain is like, nope, don't go there. You're going to get hurt. But we learn things whether we know it or not, and then we end up blocking ourselves from that which we want because our brain is trying to keep us safe.
Yeah, and that's the training that is the building of the muscle, because it is like you're completely right. It's the congruency. It's the combination of the mind and the heart. You want the heart to lead the way, but you still need that judgment of the mind, so that because of our past experiences, we definitely don't want to just walk into oncoming traffic because we're like, well, I'm loving, and this is not dangerous because I'm in my heart space. No, we still need that
We still
combination
need to
and
be,
that
yeah.
that cooperation of both. However, you want the heart to lead the way, and I think that's where we've gotten out of congruency, is that our minds are leading the way, and we've been taught for many years that the mind and the brain is the master organ. But when you really look into the biology of us as human beings, our heart forms first, and
Mhm.
it is the master organ. And when you look at just the energy and the electromagnetic spectrum of the heart, it is 10 times greater, 1,000 times greater electromagnetically than the brain.
Mhm.
And so we know when we get around somebody who has an open heart or is loving, we can feel that.
Mhm.
And so operating from more of a heart space and being in that heart space with that little bit of judgment, kind of checks and balances, is really the congruency that we're looking for. But it starts with that. And I know for me, I'm very intellectual. I get in my headspace far too often, and so it's checking myself and going, oh wait, am I stuck in my head? Let me get back down in my heart space, because we will overthink things and start to stress on things and create that fight or flight, which doesn't have there. In our modern world, we're not chased by saber tooths and bears all the time. There's
Right.
no real physical threat, but your brain doesn't know the difference between a grizzly bear and your mother-in-law. You're going to way. And
That's awesome. I love that. I'm actually really lucky. I love my mother-in-law, just for the record.
well, that's
So,
just an example that I heard from somebody else, and I found it funny. I like to use.
no, that's really awesome. It's so true. Like there's all kinds of movies and stuff about how, and I've heard stories, but I'm one of the lucky ones.
That's what see
That's definitely.
you are. And be thankful that you are one of the lucky ones,
Oh
because I have
yeah.
heard horror stories.
Yeah, no, I have
But
too.
the awareness of, okay, I'm creating a story, I'm going into stress and fight or flight right now, and using that as a catalyst to go, oh, maybe take a breath. And it's amazing how the simple things are really the most powerful. The stopping and counting to 10, putting the hand on the heart, and dropping down to your heart space. Because when you become present, the brain doesn't know the present, and that's really the biggest issue. It knows the past and the future.
Right.
It's judging the past and trying to use that to gain wisdom, and then it's attempting to predict the future so that it's safe.
Mhm.
But being in the heart space, you're actually present. And from my experience, having practiced this and using it as a tool, being present is far more functional in your everyday life, because whatever is presented to you in that present moment, you're able to deal with it, or find the answers, or find a solution to it, or be able to accept what's going on, versus being in your mind where you're like, this should not be this way. Traffic shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be this hot or this cold. It's just judging different things. And so
Everything.
the heart space is that space where you can actually accept things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know we mentioned it before on your Awake TV, but the best technique that I've learned is from the Heart Math Institute. And if you are interested in learning more about heart brain coherence, the Heart Math Institute is the best place to go. They've been doing this work for 30 years. They have a lot of tools and equipment that you can actually use to train yourself to get into a heart brain coherence. There's like the M-Wave Pro, which is something you click on your ear, and you do breathing exercises, and actually shows you what your heart brain coherence is, and something that you can practice to create that muscle.
Oh,
But
cool.
the simple technique, I mean, it's one of those things. I've heard this several times before. It's too simple, and of course,
Of course,
that's
everything is always too simple.
yeah.
We
Well,
make
the
it
best
hard.
things in life are. I mean, the best things in life are
Yeah.
simple, because why would the greater intelligence try to make everything so hard? No, that's our egos. Our egos want
Right.
everything to be hard and convoluted. But it's as simple as placing your hand or both hands over your heart space,
Hmm.
breathing into your heart space and imagining your heart expanding,
Hmm.
and then bringing up a loving emotion as you're sitting there, imagining your heart expanding and contracting. Think about your pets or your kids, maybe your kids when they were babies, maybe not now, just depending on where they're at. But just
I'm past the
bringing,
teenagers. It's all good.
yeah, there are those. We all have our phases, but
Right.
just that simple 3-step technique will get you into your heart space. And this is something, the more you practice it, you can actually make it a skill. And it's something I use a lot of times in traffic when I start to get irritated or start judging. This shouldn't be this way. And of course, being in the Denver area, traffic
Oh
can
my,
be
yeah.
horrific. nothing like LA or Chicago, but it can rates up there. But just being able to put my hand on my heart and just sit there and take a breath, and it just calms me down. And then I can enjoy the music, I can enjoy the scenery, I can enjoy the moment. If I'm in my brain, if I'm in my headspace, I'm not going to enjoy it.
Shifting focus from here to here.
Mhm.
Yeah, just shifting that focus is crazy.
It's, that 18-inch journey is probably the longest and greatest journey any of us will ever take from head to heart.
Yeah, most definitely. So what's really interesting it's coming up, and I'm thinking about it right now too, is I've been hearing this, and I'm not sure, like, I'm just going to go with it because that's what my guides have been telling me. A lot of people, I think, tend to spiritual bypass is what the phrase that they've been giving me, where they're like, oh, now everything's bliss. And I'm like, but at some point you really need to work through the emotions. And I think that's the great thing about, I don't know anything about heart math. I'll tell you that like a few months ago, I did a live, and that's when I came up, the guides told me heart set, and I had never heard that before. And somebody on there posted and said, that's what, like, heart math. And I'm like, what is heart math? I had never even heard of it. And so now it's kind of coming into my awareness all the time. But I feel like when you can really be heart set, it also helps you process emotions in a more realistic and more powerful way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that getting out of the brain, because the brain's going to judge it right, wrong, good or bad. It's
You
going to try
shouldn't
to
feel this way.
say, yeah, you shouldn't be
Yeah.
this way, and should be the heart's going to go, this is what it is. And being in that heart space is really, and that's one of the things I've really been working on, is getting back to a more one focus, the law of one, and helping people to realize that there is no real good or bad. It's contrast. And we
Yeah.
need both. We need the light for the dark. We need the dark for the light. And each has its purpose. And the spiritual bypass is something I have seen quite a bit. And I know I've been guilty of it in my past too. Just like, oh, no, I'm fine. It's all good. That was supposed to happen. I accept it. But I have not done anything.
Absolutely everything has a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything has a reason.
Yeah.
And it's all good, but I've done nothing to actually address the trauma
The
and the
actual,
pain
yeah.
that's actually within. And you're absolutely 100% right. Being in your headspace to attempt to address that will get you deeper into that rabbit hole. It's like the crabs in the buckets, just going to pull you deeper and deeper. If you get into your heart space, you can actually accept that, yes, I have this pain, I have this trauma. Now what do I do with it? And that's what I focus on quite a bit in my first two books, about the power of perspective. Okay, these things happened. Now what? Maybe
Exactly.
maybe I didn't consciously choose these parents. Maybe at some higher spiritual level I did, but these experiences have happened. And instead of being a victim to them, maybe I chose them. And what did I learn from that? And what is the lesson behind it? And what I found in my own experience, taking a look at my life from that perspective of choice, like maybe I chose these experiences. I chose to live this way and grow up this way and have these experiences of pain and trauma, because now they are part and parcel and kind of the foundation to the work I do. If I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be interested in being heart centered. I wouldn't be interested in communication and connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that has led directly to why I'm here today with you.
Yeah. Which is so funny, because literally what you're saying right now, I'm like, we almost teach the same thing, because that's how I'm like, it doesn't matter if you were responsible for it. If something horrible happened to you as a kid or what, even if it's totally not anything that you created, right? If you take responsibility for it, meaning, yes, this happens, and now I choose how it affects my life. And I know sometimes people get really upset when they hear that, but I really feel like if you're on a spiritual journey, or if you're on the awakening path or the ascension path or whatever you want to call it, you have to have that radical responsibility, saying, I'm responsible. I will take full responsibility of exactly where I'm at right now. And that's how you step into your power, because then you realize that you have the choice with how you respond and how you make choices and all of these things, right? And then you can really start learning how to make choices with your heart. Does this feel good? Does it feel right? Does it, what am I emotionally feeling about this? All
Yeah,
of
I
it.
mean, it's funny how things come back around. The older is new again. But one of my least favorite sayings, especially doing a lot of the personal development work I've done and a lot of the men's group work I've done, is "So what? Now what?" I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah.
you are not at the place yet where you can say, "Yes, I chose this," if you're not at the place yet where you really want to own whatever the trauma is, at least you can still say, "So what? Now what? That happened. Now what I want to, where do I want to go from here?" Because every moment is, it's a brand new world, it's a brand new moment, and we do have the power of choice to say, from this point forward, I'm changing. From this point forward, I'm living in a new
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So what now what, I guess.
Yeah. Isn't that so funny? I love that. I don't know if I've ever heard that. So what now what? But I love that. Like I do say, okay, well now what? Like
Mhm.
you get to choose. Starting right now today, you can choose. And because my book is Embodied Grace, Create a Life You Love. And I'm like, you can start right now to
Yeah.
create that life if you want it. And I know I love your book too, because it's entitled,
It's not your life, it's you.
It's
Layman's
You.
Guide to Power Perspective, and it really is.
Yeah,
It's all about power
it
perspective.
is so totally is. So I love that. I thought you were going to say the onion. I hate that one too, but it's so flippin' true.
Well, it's true. It is. I mean,
Ugh,
I've tried to go away from the onion. I prefer the spiral now, because life
yeah,
is this spiral. Because each time, we're going to revisit the same lessons, we're going to revisit the same
from a
traumas
higher
until we learn
perspective.
from a higher perspective, and until we learn that. And it's very, especially on the spiritual path. I think that's where the spiritual bypass can come in, because you're like, well, I've already dealt with that. But realizing that it's a spiral and we're still going up, that okay, you dealt with that from that level. Now you're dealing it from this level, and each level gives you more
More
wisdom and
perspective.
more perspective and more power to really be of service to others, because we can help anybody that we're a little ahead of. That I used to feel like I had to be perfect to be a coach or to be
Mm-mm.
of support to anybody else. And then a mentor of mine said that, you only have to be one step ahead of somebody on the path to be of value to them, because you
Mm-hmm.
can see the root or the rock or the thing that they don't see yet. And it's
Mm-hmm.
that same sort of thing. We can still be of service as we're in our own growth. And I think that's one of the things that's really coming up now. And I know you and I have talked about that, of being authentic as a teacher, as a coach, as a counselor in our own growth process. No more that 90s plastic perfect thing, but being like, yeah, you know what, I'm on my own journey too.
Yeah, I actually just did that yesterday. So on, I have Patreon too, and so I do. There's membership there. It's so you get all of the channeled messages that I have. And yesterday I had I think it's the longest one I've ever had. It was almost an hour, um, and it was just. But I was sharing everything. I'm like, you guys don't think I'm immune to this. I say this all the time. Don't think I'm immune to this. I'm going through it right with you guys. Like, so it's, and I think that's why it actually helps, because it's not this for the longest time. So my whole thing is perfectionism. Like I
Mm.
needed to be the perfect wife and the perfect mother and the perfect house and the perfect everything, and I was constantly striving for perfection. So then I had my little awakening, whatever you want to call it, where I was like, you know what, something's obviously missing. What am I doing? And I started diving into self-help books and all those kind of things. So then I wanted to be this perfect spiritual person, right? And I have health issues, which is no, there again, that's no, like everybody knows about it. I've talked about it before. I don't share everything because I don't feel like I need to go into the trauma drama BS. But like, I'm not going to, if somebody asks me, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm like, yeah, I have health shit. Like it, half of the people on the planet do. It's just, sometimes it's hard to be human. Um, but so in my thing, I'm like always telling them, you guys don't think that anybody's immune from this. If they are, they're either lying or they're a monk and they don't interact with humanity. Because it's like everybody goes through stuff. Now if I was if
Yeah,
I could live in a
I've thought
monastery
about
where
that
there's
monk life.
nowhere else, nobody else there, and you could just meditate and eat
Yeah,
food and that's all you have to do, it'd be
yeah.
fantastic.
I've thought about how awesome that monk life would be, but then I also thought how boring that would be, because
Yeah.
yeah, it's there. You get the old mythology of the wise man in the cave on top of the mountain, and yeah, there's some purpose to that, but that's why there's a reason there's only one or two of those guys.
Hmm.
It's not, it's a very isolating path, but yeah, I mean, I've come across a new idea for a TED talk. So if anybody's out there with the TED people, but
There you go.
the I'm a fraud TED talk, because
Mm.
one of my biggest fears, and it comes back to that same perfectionism, is I needed to be perfect in my word, in my deed, in my everything, which, as we all know, being human, that's next to impossible, if not impossible. But that I needed to be perfect before I could be of service to anybody else, before I could put anything out. And that has really held me back because of my fear of being called out as a fraud. And it
Mm.
just dawned on me recently on a walk and while I was meditating that maybe if I just acknowledge that and get into that heart space and say, yeah, you know what, I am a fraud. And that's okay, because I'm a human being. And if we think
Mm.
back on our lives, the things that were important to us as a child and things that we believed as a child are completely different than as an adult. And so as we grow, yeah, we're all fraudulent. Not any of us keep our word 100%. Not any
Mhm.
of us really are so
Immune.
so immune or single-minded that we never veer off course, but that's
Yeah.
part of the growth. And so it's like, yeah, I'm Jason. I'm a author and a speaker and a coach and a healer, and I'm also a fraud, and that's
Right.
kind of
It's all true. And I
it's
say,
all true.
yeah, yeah,
But it's like the same thing of getting into your heart space and accepting that.
yeah.
And then you're immune to it. It becomes armor.
Mhm.
I've spent so much time so afraid of that anytime anybody questioned me, I would shut down.
Mm.
And they may have been questioning me out of genuine curiosity, but I just immediately went to the negative fight or flight of, oh, they're judging me. They're going to find out I'm a fraud.
That perfectionism is
Hmm.
so, it's harsh, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Brene Brown and her work is, I mean, perfectionism comes from shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I grew up, especially in the South and in that kind of mentality, Southern conservative mentality, shame was actually a parenting tool.
Right. Shame on
Oh,
you. That was
yeah,
all.
shame on you. Yeah.
That was always it. So it's funny that you bring up Brene. I haven't studied any of her stuff. I haven't read any of her books. That's probably like sacrilegious for being in the spiritual realm. But I did see her Netflix thing on the
Yeah.
power of vulnerability, which I'll be honest, I kind of had a little like,
Did you have a reaction?
well, no, not a reaction, but just like, I think that is so powerful. If you're vulnerable, you have to know who you're vulnerable with.
Right.
You can't be vulnerable with people that are not at the at the same level, because if you've got to be safe, you know what I mean, like so I love the idea of it, but I'm like, whenever I hear her name, I'm just like, yeah, but you got to be careful, like if
Well,
you're in
that's
an abusive relationship, you don't want to be vulnerable
yeah.
with that person, you know what I
Well,
mean?
that's one of the things she talks about too, is that you're only vulnerable with people who have earned it,
Oh,
and
good.
she
Okay, I did
uses
not know
this.
that, so that
Yeah.
that makes me so much happier.
No, she actually, because she uses this with her daughters and her children, and one of her daughters asked that question because she had a some experience in school, and her trust had been shot. Some girl had done something distrustful or been mean to her
Okay.
or something like that, and so she's like, no, it's the marble in the jar analogy that she uses, that to find the people that you can be vulnerable with and that you trust, it's the little things that add up.
Right.
It's the remembering your birthday, remembering your parents' names, remembering the little details about you. Those are your real friends, and those ones you trust, and those ones you can be vulnerable with. But absolutely not, do not. And it even goes along with what we were talking about before, spiritual bypass. There's the spiritual dumping, the
Mhm.
the, the spiritual dump truck, where you meet somebody for the first time and you just bleh, and just emotionally
All the
vomit
trauma
all over
trauma.
them. Yeah, just
Yeah.
because and I've had that experience. I mean, being a healer and empath, I want to get in the heart space and connect with somebody, and sometimes that's the first time they've experienced that with another person in years. And
Mhm.
so it's very common to just be like, bleh, this is
Yeah.
somebody who will listen to me and let me dump all my stuff. Not always the most appropriate, especially if you're at a bar or at a restaurant or something, at a
Wherever.
networking
Yeah.
event. But
Mhm.
it's time and place, and definitely finding the right people to be vulnerable with, because I mean, that's what we're all looking for, is that intimacy and connection, and knowledge that I can trust this person to show them all of me, and they will still love me. And that comes from being in the heart space, and brings us right back around to the heart, where if you're in your heart space, you can better judge who you can be vulnerable with, who you can be open with. And that's the space that we all want to be in, that we're all looking for, that connection and compassion. When we come from our head space, we're judging physical things and surface things. From the
And
heart
wondering what
space,
they're
it's
gonna think.
yeah, yeah. What are they going
Yeah.
to think? And that's where the editing comes from. I spent so many years in relationships walking on eggshells and editing, because I didn't want to hurt them, or I didn't think they would really love me if they knew me. And so I was always in my headspace,
Mm.
judging and planning and manipulating and plotting, versus just being in my heart space and being authentic. You
Mhm.
know, it's much
Yeah.
easier to say I'm feeling triggered right now and I'm hurt, versus you did this to me, or all these things that come from being in the headspace.
Yeah. Which is, it's interesting that you just said that, because that a lot of what I've been being called to talk about is like being in the victim mentality. They're doing this, they did this, he did that, she did, instead of because then you're a victim of it and you feel like you're helpless.
Well, that's one of the things I spend a lot of time coaching on, especially with couples, is that nobody can argue when you say I feel, or
Mhm.
this is happening to me, or this is what I feel. No other person can say, no, you don't feel that. They don't know what you feel. And you're also not blaming. As soon as
Right,
you tell
right.
somebody you did this to me, or you're making me feel, their defenses go up, and now you're not open to communication and connection. Now it's just the verbal combat of who is right.
Right.
which that never gets you really anywhere. You know, you might win a war of attrition where that you just beat them down to the point where they just give up,
Mm-hmm.
but that hurt and pain is still there. If you
Yeah.
start from a heart space of, I feel this way, and this
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm experiencing, they
Yeah.
can't argue with that, and then they can actually show a little bit of compassion and empathy that, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually the biggest issue. We don't express what we're actually feeling, and if we don't express it to our partner, unless there's a huge telepathic energetic connection with them, they don't know.
Right.
So expressing that is actually, not only is it healing, it's something that helps you to connect, because you're actually showing and giving them an opportunity to reflect. Because if
Right.
I say I'm feeling this way, they have the opportunity to say, oh, well, I'm feeling this way. Oh, I didn't know that made you feel this way. And then there's room to communicate and connect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I mean, the simple old saying of, you can either be right or you can be happy, is very true when it comes to that.
A lot of times that is true. So I'm curious to see, first of all, like, there's not very many that speak on this. So how did you even get to I mean, there's beginning to be more and more, you know, and especially with me being on Awake TV, I'm seeing that more and more. But I'm from a small town, little redneck community, farm girl,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? So we're talking rough and tough. And you and I have talked
Yeah.
about that too, because you had like the military background and whatever. So I'm always curious to see like how you ended up in this work, and um, like for you, what is your process? Because I think our processes are both a little bit different. And I like to bring people, even though it's the same information, you can learn from so many different people. So like, how did you get into this? And then what is your process to make sure that you're in that heart space?
Well, how I got into it is basically that it was something that was lacking as I grew up. And like I said, you know, before when we talked, I, you know, growing up in a Southern military family. Um, my father's father, my grandfather passed. My father was 5, and so he grew up in a single mother household and whatnot. And so he was the only boy. And because of that era, the thought process was, you have to toughen the boys up. Like, you got to be tough, you got to suck it up. You don't feel, you don't emote. And I was a very emotional, empathic child, and I still am. I just learned to shove it down and to bury it. And then as I got older, and then after my father's passing, I was like, okay, I need to look at what I was taught and what I learned and what I ingrained, and basically look at what was I missing. And what I was missing was connection, intimacy, and real honest open communication, because I was always editing. I was always attempting to be perfect, and attempting to never show emotion, or to not be a whole complete human being. You know, it's like a lot of men out there. I wore all the masks, the stoic mask, and the know-it-all mask, and all these different things. And so it was just something that came to me like, I can no longer do this. I need to be who I really am. And of course, it's a process. It's like, you know, the spiral and the onion
A
analogy all over
constant.
again. Yeah, it's constant.
Yeah.
It's every time I think I've got it, it's another layer. There's some more to it, and a deeper level. But the more I do the work, the more cathartic it is, the more I enjoy it. And no, it's not always fun. I mean, each time I'm like, I'm gonna go for a healing, I'm gonna go for a ceremony, or I'm gonna go really like have a real in-depth moment, I have those fears and I have those doubts. But then afterwards, it's always worth it. Like,
Mhm.
every time I get a good cry, and feel so much lighter afterwards. But
Mhm.
that's basically my how I got here, was that this was what I needed. It was something that, because I needed it, I studied it. Like, the old saying, those who can't do, those who can't teach. I
Mhm.
teach because this was something that, if I don't constantly teach it, I don't constantly remind myself by reminding others and teaching others, I would just fall back into the old ways of being. And
Mhm.
so I teach, and I share this because I need it so much more. And every class I do, every talk I give, I'm there listening to the same words coming out of my mouth as everybody else. And so I get
Mhm.
the reminder. And for me, the best process is really to remind myself that being in the heart space is about the only way to actually create healing.
Mhm.
It's almost a tennis match sometimes, where it's head hard, back and forth. But if I will stop and breathe and get into my heart space, I feel the tension and the stress fall away. And then I can actually consciously be present with whatever I'm experiencing at that moment.
Mhm.
And whether it's Buddhist meditation, Yin meditation, Heart Math Institute, some of Dr. Joe stuff, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So whatever you can use. I mean, gardening, going for a walk.
Mhm.
There's unlimited amount of types of meditation.
Mhm.
The whole point of meditation is get out of the head.
Right. And so coming from the Christian background, for me, it's always, there were so many songs that we sang when we were in Sunday school, you know what I mean? Like This Little Light of Mine, it was always bright in your heart, or joy, joy, joy down in my heart. You know what I mean? So it was like, for me, it was always like, okay, Jesus, show me. And I just automatically want to feel my heart and be like, okay, let me just guide me here on what's going on. And it's all about getting in the present moment, because when you do that, what happens is you're physically touching. So that's where you focus.
Yeah, that's why you look at all the old pictures of the saints and the masters, and they're always
always praying. Mm-hmm.
And that's because that contact right there at the sternum, that gets you
right into the heart,
awareness into your heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true.
Well, and it's so funny too how we automatically, when we can be present in what we're doing, how we automatically kind of drop into that without even trying. So like for me, when I'm gardening or when I'm, doing a craft or whatever, you totally get lost in it. If I've had people say, well, I don't know how to meditate. And I'm like, have you ever spaced out when you're driving? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, well, then you can meditate, because it's just being able to relax a little bit.
Yeah. That's why I always bring up pets and young children and stuff, because in most cases, whether we're aware of it or not, we automatically fall into our heart space. We're automatically 100% present when it's playing with a pet or playing with a little child. And so we all have those experiences, but I think some of us feel like meditation is the, sitting on the bed of nails and the lotus position and all these different things. And really it's just about being able to get out of your head. I love working with athletes because they intuitively know this. They just may not have consciously known it. The zone, being in the zone and being in that spot, that's in that meditative, I lost the word, it starts with T, but the trance-like state. That's what it was. Gotcha. Being in that trance-like state just means you're out of your head. Because the head your mind is all completely focused on good and bad, safe and not safe, tomorrow and yesterday. The heart is only concerned with today.
Yep.
But having that connection and being able to go back and forth is really how we start to learn to heal and to be present and to be safe. You don't want to, it's like anything else, you need moderation in all things, including moderation. It's okay to go back and forth, but always having that, one of the best examples I ever had was from one of my martial arts teachers. Was like, we assume that balance is stagnation. But if you ever stand on one foot and you feel those micro movements and stuff, there's constant movement. So balance is really that kind of flow.
An action word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really I always tell people it's an action word. There's activity involved in being able to be in balance. Yeah. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know we're already kind of coming up, I think, on half an hour. I sometimes whenever I get my guests on, I'm just like, oh my God, we could just keep talking forever. And I know we probably could, but I want to go ahead just for the sake of time and wrap it up. But thank you so much for coming on today. Tell us where they can find you if they want to learn more about what you do and what you offer.
I'm pretty easy to find. If you just look at the bottom of the screen there, jasonbkendrick@.com, and you can find my website. My books are on there. You can find some old videos. And if you need to get a hold of me, email, call. I'm available for one-on-ones, workshops, Reiki healings. If you need a speaker, motivational speaker, or just a constructive speaker, I'm there as well. So use me, please, because I would like to get out there and be of service as often as possible. So please reach out.
All right, guys. Well, thanks. Always thanks for joining me. I appreciate you guys being here today. I will make sure that his website is linked below this, wherever it's posted. And I will talk to you guys all soon. And thanks again, Jason, for coming on today. And we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.